All right, welcome to the I2 podcast. So excited for another episode and just thankful for those who are listening today. You know, just love doing this podcast because we really get to talk with influencers, people who God is using in different areas, and get to just explore how they're using that influence to impact the world around them. And I'm so excited for today's episode. We have a treat. It's something we've never done before, first time ever. Joined by another couple, incredible friends of myself, my wife, and just excited for you to hear their story. And also joined by the one and only, my wife, Jennifer, is on the podcast with us today.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me, babe.
Man, I'm so glad that you're on with us today, and just excited to do this special podcast focused on marriage. And I know in my life and just in our world, marriage is so central to everything that we do, that we're a part of. And so Jen and I are excited to interview our friends, Paul and Emily Lanphier.
Hey, guys.
Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you. We are excited to be on. Thank you for having us today.
So excited.
Come on, it's going to be fun. I've been friends with Paul for years. And, I believe your first date was at our wedding.
It was.
It was.
I remember
12 plus years ago.
Yep.
And just to see what God has done. Paul leads an organization, the Hope Center for Kids, organization that focuses on working with kids in Omaha's inner city right here. An organization that actually Emily's parents founded how many years ago?
Is it 21 or 22 years, babe? I think it's 22 this year.
22 this year.
Man.
22.
Wow. I was in 3rd, 4th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, when that happened.
So cool and crazy. Cool to see the impact and just what God is doing there. And I mean, your parents, Ty and Terry Schenzel, so much impact in our city with marriages specifically, Hope-filled marriage and ministry that they were a part of. And you guys are, just continuing to have influence and carry that torch. Ooh. Tell us a little, just to start off with, tell us a little bit about your marriage, your relationship journey, your first date. We'll take credit for it.
You guys are the
wedding.
reason we're together. We were your oldest child's first babysitter.
Yes.
Not to be prideful, but
first babysitter.
Yes.
You guys trusted us with that.
You could hear the skid marks as you guys left the
peeled out of the
driveway.
We were like, hey, we honestly trusted you like a lot because we didn't hand them off to anybody, especially that first one.
Baby went to no one else, and those photos made it into his baby album.
Yes.
Oh,
we cherish those. We
Immortalized.
cherish those.
That was a historic day for us.
Yeah.
We went to your wedding. After the wedding, we went to a movie.
Hello.
Held hands. No
Sparks flew.
Yep. We'll just keep it there. No, but
That's all that happened.
but our marriage journey. So that was our first date. So we were just like probably a couple people we know, a work in progress when we started on our journey. So I was 21, my wife was 20, and what was it? We were probably, I think, a month into our relationship. She breaks up with me and says, "You're still a little wild. I don't know if I can date you."
That's true.
9 days later.
I feel like this sounds like crazy similar
to
our story.
Yeah, we did.
We had
how far into
a
your
breakup
relationship?
before back together. It was probably like, what, a year?
A year.
So we met.
Before we were engaged.
And did you break up with him?
Yeah, I
Jen?
broke up with him.
See, us girls.
And I actually hung out with Josh
There's
that night.
standards. We have
There are-
standards,
yep.
and you know what? We had to make it clear.
No, hey, I respect that. That. But we were 19 when we met.
We were young. We were
Wow.
babies.
And so you guys were 20, 21.
Yeah.
We got married at 21.
Wow.
Same.
So, we were still a work in progress.
Yeah.
But so you guys, 2021. So she breaks up with you.
She breaks up. We get, and then 9 days later, we're back together. And
It was because I asked you to return a movie that we had checked out. Remember Blockbuster, everyone?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
He
That
had
used to
my
be our date night.
Blockbuster video, and I said, "Hey, can you return that?" And he said, "Can I call you?" And that conversation led to sharing our hearts about just what the Lord was doing. And I feel like, it actually ended up being a really good thing for us because it kind of, when you are thinking about those big decisions in life, like who do I want to be with, it kind of causes you to say, who do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be with? It's like my parents would always say, it's the biggest decision that you'll make apart from who runs your life is who you're going to be with. And now that we're celebrating 12 years in June, it's so true because it affects so many decisions.
I love that too, because I know for us, we work with a lot of young people who are looking to get married, and how do you know who you want to be with? Like, how do you know if this person's right or not right? I mean, how did you guys kind of navigate that? Obviously, it started with that conversation, but how'd you know?
It's not. I think it's not who you want to be with. I think it's who you can't live without.
Oh, that's good. That was a good one.
But I
sparks fly over here.
But it's like
Valentine's
I can remember. I told my mom.
good.
I said, if I don't marry Emily, I don't feel like I'll ever find someone who I like, who I would want to be with.
Yeah.
And because I think she's like perfect for me. My mom's like, yeah, you're right. I mean, no, but Emily. I mean, that was so. It's like I was that passionate about her. It's like that's who I wanted to be with. I didn't have to have any other thoughts. It's like I knew the day I met her, I wanted to marry her. So I mean, you really, I think looking for, I would say it's like in our marriage, I feel like a couple things. My father-in-law would always tell me this. He's like, one thing I see is, are you teachable? So I think when people start looking at somebody being, are they teachable? Are they trying to grow as a person? Yeah. And then, because a lot of us say, well, that's just who we are. Right. It's like, no, who I was a year ago, who I was a week ago is not who I am today.
Yes.
I'm growing, right?
Yes.
So I think we have to always look at people and say, I think dangerous comments are, well, that's just who I am, or that's just the way I am. It's like, no, we're growing. We're trying to become more like, I want to be more in love with Jesus so I can love my wife better and, keep growing in those areas. So.
And then the other thing that we even have said, when we look at our relationship, I have told someone recently that I feel like I have a ton of hope for marriages because I can remember when we initially got married, and Paul knows this is not me springing this on him, but thinking, I think I could have made a mistake. Like, I do not know if the relationship that I want, just because we were working through things, we were a decade younger getting married than when my parents had got married. Yeah.
Wow.
So my mom got married when she was 30. I got married at 21.
And I wasn't a wallflower my whole life.
But
expound upon that.
Let's not. No,
another podcast about coming out of life.
But we talk about like some of the things that I feel like have caused us to be, we're growing, but successful. Another one would be, I would say to any listener out there, is the person that you are with humble and able to, because Paul, I feel like the posture of your heart has always been like, speak into my life.
Yeah.
And if someone is not teachable,
that's good.
Yes. That is so dangerous.
Yep.
But there is safety in being willing to accept like advice, correction, feedback. And I think your humility has been like a safeguard for our relationship, truly.
It's so good.
That is so good.
Babe, when did you know that you wanted to marry me? That's what I want to know. When did you know?
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, I remember for myself, it's kind of, it's amazing how God just does different things. And I think it was one of the first times we actually hung out. And we were at your house playing a board game with your sisters, which I never did. That was my first time. I'm doing something I never do.
Have you played one since then? Is the real question.
That was the last time I played a board game.
The first and the last there,
the
right?
first and the last. It was worth it, doing hard things for somebody I was interested in. And I remember we were looking through old pictures. And I was in a men's group, and one of the questions the guy asked is, I want you to describe your wife, what she looks like and what she's wearing. On our first date, we're looking through pictures, and there's a picture of Jen wearing the exact outfit that I had described to this
meant
person.
To be, guys.
Wow.
So you're saying your future wife described?
My future wife. It was before I knew her.
Yes.
This is probably a month or so before I met
It's wild,
you.
Yes.
And I knew, it was like, I didn't tell her that.
Good.
I would have ran.
Like,
I would have ran. No.
She's the one. So, and obviously it was a whole, it was playing board games, staying up late, talking on the phone, hanging out.
Yeah.
But it was like, man, I think she's supposed to be the one. That's how I knew.
Yeah. I would say, similar. We had a lot of conversation, which I think was helpful in getting to know each other.
Which was good for me too.
And I think it helped us to get to know each other and to talk about the things that mattered and what that was important to us. And so I think in that, even though we were 19, I don't know what kind of questions we were actually asking.
I would say this too.
But it was helpful.
We were both just trying to pursue God.
Yes, we were.
And we didn't want, we honestly weren't looking for a relationship. You especially weren't.
No, I was not.
I jokingly tell the story. Your sister and my sister tried to hook us up.
Yes.
You saw a picture of me. You said, man, he does not look very attractive. Throws it on the floor.
I didn't look.
That's what she says.
No, I didn't look. I flipped it over. I wasn't interested. That's not what I was headed towards, what my goal was.
But I think that, it was so good because we weren't really looking for each other.
Right.
But it was like, man, God brought us together and started this journey. And one of the things that I love talking about when we talk about purpose and marriage is this idea of who we're becoming.
Yeah.
And you guys have been married for how many years?
12.
Almost 12.
So 12 in
12 in
June.
June. You guys
13 in August.
August. We're not the same people today that we were
Thank God.
12, 13 years ago.
Amen.
Right?
How has marriage and being in relationship with each other really helped you become who you are today?
Yeah, I feel like when you have someone my wife is, or Emily's always, it's like in my corner.
Yep.
And constantly cheering me on, constantly calling out like greatness in each other. And I mean, it's like we got married and I'm driven, I'm ambitious, I want to go somewhere, but having a wife that was not afraid to tell the truth, not having a wife that was not afraid also to just fan the flames of my heart.
Yep.
And same with her. It's like I can remember a couple years into marriage, we're struggling because just going through, there was some stuff going on, family stuff and just community wise. And Emily was, not to be too vulnerable with your life.
Be transparent with my life, Paul.
But she was just she was struggling.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was like I believe not in your struggles now so much, but I believe in who God's creating you to be. And we talk about the process. We're all going through real life. We're all going through process.
Yes.
And I think what we're looking at though is how that person's like, do we believe that God is good and going to finish that process?
Yep.
And I feel like marriage, just being with each other, has been my greatest part of. It's like that's the greatest part of the process. Getting to enjoy knowing that person's behind me, knowing that they love me. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yep. That's good.
I'll never forget, we are referencing, I would say our first 2 years of marriage were a very steep learning curve. Yeah. And I remember what you're referencing, babe, is me sitting at the dining room table and just feeling, I don't know if I was depressed or what, but so discouraged, kind of at a little bit of a low point. And Paul said to me along the lines of, when I look at you, I don't see the struggle. I see who God has called you to be. And I feel like at that moment, there was really a shift in my heart. And I was able to he believed it before I could believe it for myself. Wow. And so hugely formative in moments of, there's sometimes that gap between what we know is truth and the realities of maybe our struggle or our growing up. And so I think Paul has helped me to believe in the fullness of who God's called me and us to be. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
That is great.
How about you, babe? Would you share anything in terms of just how we've grown over the last, specifically how I've grown? Just how marriage has grown us as a couple?
I would say, I remember in the early years, you kind of came to the conclusion first, thankfully, but of the Lord changed me. That was your prayer. And we both had such different upbringings and backgrounds and cultures and all of that, trying to almost compete with each other and say, who's right and who's wrong and who has a better understanding of what. And I think once we both kind of had a heart to heart and like, okay, what's going to get us to be better? And we both had a desire to be more like Christ. So then we both came together and said, okay, Lord, change me and not, us trying to prove what's better or best. And I think after we both prayed that prayer and just continually praying that every day, I think those were moments that were pivotal in our marriage.
Wow. Hands down, I would say the game-changing prayer for our marriage is Lord, change me. And it's like so clear to me in those early months and year of like trying to get my point across and convince you of my perspective and my way and just like the revelation that, man, it's not about my perspective or your perspective, it's about God's perspective,
right?
And the new story that he wants to tell through us and through our marriage. And it's amazing how God brings together people who are so different.
Yes.
I mean, we couldn't come from more different backgrounds. And, you know, for me, I thought I was this strong, amazing leader.
You are.
And my empathy and compassion was at an all-time low. And when you engage in relationship and you don't have a lot of empathy and compassion, but your wife is strong in empathy and compassion, and just like learning just to see life through different lenses. I mean, marriage has been, other than God, the single most life-changing experience for me in my growth as a leader and just as an individual.
Wow.
Yeah. You learn a lot about leadership through family.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and I mean, and especially if we're saying those prayers, Lord, change me.
Yes.
We used to always pray, we'd say, Lord, never give us anything before we're ready. I've now said, God, you can give us some stuff, please. When you're going through the desert.
I need perfect.
I mean, let's try this again. But really what we were saying is don't give us things before.
That's good.
It's like we don't want things to crush us. Like we don't want to be taken out. And I think that's an important. And when you have a spouse who is constantly, where we're sitting there and we're like, all right, we're going to. It's like we're going to call each other on this. We're going to It's like because we're all, like I said, we're going through it, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I want to make sure. It's like, man, we don't want to be taken out because the most important thing is right here. That's what our kids see. That's what's modeled, and even the people around us. It's like when they see how you treat your spouse, it's like I believe it gives a picture into how you're going to treat them and how they're going to work for you. So I just think those are important.
Good.
They would say when you're hiring people, you should have them come with their spouse.
Yep.
Do dinner with them.
Yep.
I wish I would have done that more.
Hey, you're exactly right. We just did it the other day, actually. I mean, I love what you said. Like, I thought leadership was all about speaking and being out front. And through marriage, you learn what real leadership is and servant leadership and trying to serve and honor the other person.
Yeah, I've heard it said, I don't remember what quote it is, but it's whoever owns the family owns a future. And it's so powerful because family starts with marriage, and marriage will then lead the family and the generations to come and the next generation. And I think it's so influential and it starts at home and it starts in your marriage.
That's good.
Yeah.
What do you guys do? I'd be interested, if you want to add anything, feel free. But what do you guys do to like make sure you guys are tight and on the same page? And like, I mean, do you have date nights and rhythms? Like, what do you guys do to grow in your relationship together? I'm smiling because Paul's over here just smiling.
I'm really nervous what Paul's going to say.
Every guy knows the answer to that question. I'm not gonna give it due to.
It's all right. This is a free nugget. My mom would always say, they had a marriage ministry that sex is the glue of marriage. So obviously that is a non-negotiable.
I've been trying to like share that in different ways with my wife. Just thank you for putting that out
You're
there.
welcome. I hope I get like
all the men out there, just go ahead.
We can clap real quick.
Get me gift cards to coffee shops, men. You're welcome.
Yes. Send us Starbucks. But it's like, and we have 4 kids to prove it. No, but it's a. I think trying to it's trying to take those times where you're going to connect with each other's hearts. And it's hard. I mean, especially when you have 4 kids running around, but going on date nights. I texted her last time, like, can we go on a date? Well, today after this is like, we get to go get lunch together. And really trying to make each other a priority where it's like, we're getting away. It's like, how's your heart doing? Asking each other, like, what can I do to serve you better? And just those questions.
Yeah.
And keeping those on a weekly basis. I mean, we're all, sometimes it's maybe every other week, but we try to go on dates. We try to get away at least once a year together.
I was going to say that about how I feel like one of the most enriching things we've done is yearly we do a vision retreat.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, or, kind of that week between Christmas and New Year's, we'll kind of reflect on what went well, what was a win. We'll talk kind of about each of our kids and where maybe they need help or where they've done well. And we'll kind of cast vision and dream for the coming year. But it's a time to just be unified and like, where are we going? What do we want? And keeping the main thing because I mean, the story of part of my story is that I lost my parents 4 years ago. And I feel like that when you experience loss in your life, it really puts in perspective the end. And I frequently will tell Paul, like, yeah, at the end of life when we're on our deathbed, this is what is going to matter.
Yeah.
You know, me, him and I, and then our relationship with our kids.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing more that I would rather invest time, money, energy, even if it's, you know, like there's nothing I'd want to fight with you about it even, because it's so worth everything. Because at the end of life, this is what matters.
Right.
Yeah. So good. So good. And having those consistent practices and rhythms. I love what you said, you know, losing your parents 4 years ago. It puts life into perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were people who had phenomenal impact in our city, but probably their greatest impact was in the life of their children and in their family. And to see that play out, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I told her, I said, you know, obviously this is coming on the week of Kobe Bryant passing away. And I said, he gets maybe one more week than all of us of fame, fortune, all that stuff. But guess what?
Man.
Everybody else is moving on now. Everybody else is going. But I'll tell you who's not. His family's still struggling. Or they're still going through it. And so that's where you realize that's the impact around us, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the more we put that in perspective, it's like, I want my wife to feel incredibly loved. I want my kids to feel like they are my priority. I mean, a year ago, my wife says to me, I said, what like on our vision retreat, what do you need from me this year? What's the number one thing? I need you to be home more.
Yep.
I'm a 7 Enneagram, and I am an enthusiast. I love doing stuff.
Adventure.
Adventure.
He's never met a trip he didn't like.
And so I did. I went on one. That's it. One.
Yeah.
And she said, okay. But that's what. And I started making it a practice to actually be like home. Learning how to even just stay home with me. For me was hard.
So good.
So yeah.
So you're a 7. What are you, Emily?
I'm a 1.
You're a 1. Holla. 7, 1. I'm a 1.
Josh is 1. I'm a 9.
Wife is a 9. Together we're a 10. Oh, I just got to throw that out there. It's my favorite line.
they say 7s were made in heaven. So that's the.
Hey, I always have a good time whenever we're together, so I believe it. I mean, I love the rhythms that you guys talked about.
Yeah.
I know just the idea, the vision retreats, being on the same page is so huge.
Yes.
And we try to do that through date nights and through getting away sometimes. Anything, babe, you want to add to that in terms of just what we do to try to stay connected?
Yeah, I think communication. We try to communicate as much as possible. And I think over the years in maturing, thankfully, we've been able to be more vulnerable and transparent and just say, this is how I'm feeling and this is what I need from you.
Yeah.
And I think, and you shared that a little bit too. It's like, these are my needs. These are my, you know, what I need in this moment or in this upcoming week. And I feel like we've grown in that area, and that's been incredibly helpful. And just to see each other and to say, okay, I see you and I see where I can help and be a support and love you in that way.
Yeah, so good. I remember some practical questions that somebody had shared with us that we started to ask each other. What 3 things do you need from me this week? And getting very practical and specific. And it was like, I mean, it seems so simple, but we would answer those and then we would try to do them. And then the next week we'd come back and we'd say, how'd we do? And I'd say, man, I did, you know, you did great in this area, great in this area. This area we can continue to improve on.
Yeah.
And it was always
But
different. Even if it was like, man, I'm behind in like this at home. Like, can you help me out? Laundry, like picking up kids or whatever it may be.
Right.
Yeah.
And just sharing that. Or Josh's, one of his top 3 was always sex. And so it's like, okay, well, Paul, it's like goes back to the same thing every week. You know, so I'm like, okay, nothing has changed. But
hey, but even with that, the power of specificity.
Yes.
That's powerful.
And
it's
like
so powerful.
to say, this is what I need.
Especially in young
because we can't
baby
remind.
phase of life.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, we went through a
you have to
season.
schedule it.
I don't even know if the podcast should go in this direction, but we went through a season and we like mapped it out throughout the week.
Those
And
were
then-
the
I
rough
remember when you guys
seasons.
told
And
me
then created like,
It had to be 3 and under. Like when we had the 3 and under.
but like the
when kids
intentionality
were
is like,
just
hey,
young.
I know Tuesday, you know what? We're going to be tired, but we're going to tough it out on Tuesday.
Tough it out Tuesday.
Oh,
But it's like
so
there's an
good.
expectation
But you know
that was
what else it
consistent.
reminds me of is even communicating expectations on birthdays. I don't know why. It was always
Yeah.
hard for me on
Oh.
birthdays. And until recent
on,
years,
Jen. This is
I
good.
said, you know what?
We're tapping into some
I
stuff
came
here.
to a point where I said, you know what? I need to share
Hey,
even what my expectation is
so-
on my birthday. Like,
Yeah.
this is how I want to be celebrated and loved. And this is what I want the day to look like, whether it's big
Well,
or small.
I don't know if it was
mattered.
communicated that nicely.
No, it wasn't.
But you know what I learned though too Well, we both learned. I was celebrating you the way I wanted to be celebrated, and you were celebrating me the way you would want to be celebrated.
Wow.
And it was like after a couple of years of this, we're just like, man, we're missing the mark.
Right.
And then trying to find out. The other thing I learned is try to find out not a week before the birthday or the celebration.
It's a good tip,
but in
right?
times that it's not like intense or hot or leading up to it, it's like, all right, what would, and getting so practical, what does an ideal birthday look like for you?
Right.
What does an ideal honeymoon look like for you? And it was like,
boom.
She shared and I shared, and it was like, oh my goodness, I could do that.
Yeah.
Crazy revelation.
That's really profound, honestly.
Yeah.
We've had the best couple of birthdays and
best.
anniversaries in the last couple of years because of it.
Do you talk about it beforehand?
Yeah,
Because we're talking about it before.
I think one of the things that I could say to people is, don't try to make your spouse guess. Like like you said, be specific. Like don't be afraid like to be vulnerable in communication. Like this is what I need, and leave it. And I mean, I think those are just so. I think it's so
and I
important.
think that carries like to birthdays,
Yep.
to any
everything.
gift, to date nights, to sex, to in
Absolutely.
intimacy, and like in any
Everything.
way, everything to just communicate and to be vulnerable and honest in that way.
Yep.
That's so good. And for each of us, I think our communication, depending on our history and relationships, we all bring different things into marriage, our identity. It's like, ooh, I don't know if I want to talk about that.
Right,
Ooh, I
right.
don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, some parents, you never talked about anything. And then some, you talked about everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but the more we can communicate, the clearer we can communicate, man, the more powerful it is.
It's powerful.
Getting specific. Man, this is good. Like, I knew this was going to be
good.
fun.
It's good.
But, like, this is good.
It's good.
And I think it's going to help somebody, too. So we're talking about purpose, talking about who we're becoming and purpose specifically in marriage. I go back to the garden.
Wow.
And when God created Adam and he said, it's not good for man to be alone. And all the men said, amen. And so he created a helper who was just right, and Eve. And then sin entered the world and destruction. And so I always go back to that because I say, marriage was God's original intent and is the perfect picture in the garden that best reflects who God is.
Yep.
And so in our marriages, I mean, obviously God knew this. We get better together and we sharpen each other.
Yep.
But then also I think God uses us to live out a specific purpose and a destiny.
Yeah.
We didn't just get married because we like each other.
Right.
It was because God wanted to do something through our marriage. As you guys think about purpose in your marriage and impact, like where do you feel like God is leading you? What do you think is the purpose that God brought you together for?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That is.
Because I think that so many of us, it's like we celebrate, we're getting prepared for the wedding day and not the days after. You know, we spend all this money and time on the wedding, and we're not thinking about the 10 years that you're gonna, or obviously you're gonna be married longer than that.
Been
Hopefully,
married longer than 10
but
years.
I'm just saying you're not thinking about
For
that.
other people.
You're not thinking about that. And I think for us, it's like
right.
we constantly went back to, and we still do. It's like, God, who have you created us to be to reflect you to the world?
That's good.
And we pray. I mean, that's one thing we even pray. It's like and when you go through those, like when you talk about death of a family and just those really quick things that just alter the course of your life, you even more and more realize it's like, man, God, it's like, I want to be living with what you've called us to live with.
Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't have, and when that happened, I had a plan. It's like business. I want to take over the world. I want to make money. And then God stopped us in our tracks. And I don't think it was that, but it was just and during that time, that's when I came and worked with you. It's like I came to abide, and I feel like through that we started finding more purpose. Through that we started finding calling, and even just and even starting to think like that better. So it's like the younger you can start thinking like that, I think it can be the more powerful your life can be. So I think that's just encouragement. I mean, and if you're 60 years old and you're listening to us, you still have time. You still have. I mean, it's like God's not through with us. It's like you can look at so many people. It's like their best time is. I mean, it's that when you have those revelations. So I wouldn't be doing it without marriage. I got my wife. I feel like the favor on your life and just what we've developed at the core. It's like I don't know. God's doing something.
That's good.
What do you feel?
I feel like we're just kind of far enough out from processing that loss that I experienced that we experienced 4 years ago, that I'm even beginning to think, okay, Lord, like what is it going to look like for us specifically? And I totally feel like it's still unfolding right now with the ages of our kids. We have 4 kids, 7 and under. It's really intensive of, keeping them all alive pretty much. But, I feel an increasing stirring and passion for marriage. And I think something that I love about our story is that it hasn't always been perfect or easy. And we've had to work. And, it's actually just an example of the Lord's kindness that we're on a podcast talking about this because, we put in a ton of work. We went to counseling. We read the books. We went to conferences. It's like, this was not just like, oh, we're so perfectly compatible.
Right.
And so we do a great job. It's like, no, it's a million deaths over the course of the last 12 years of what it's us, not me. It's we. And so I feel like that is part of our passion. We love marriage. We love family. And I think we're just, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. I'm reminded, Paul, something that I feel like you say all the time, and I think some of the leaders maybe out of Bethel share this, but before you just focus on what you do, you find your people.
Yep.
And it's like in marriage, you find your person, your helper, your mate, your person who's going to make you better, but the person you're going to do life with.
Yes.
And in that process, you start to develop and get clear on the purpose that God has for you together and the story that he's telling through your life. And so it is, I think, a very dynamic process, especially with your marriage and figuring out what that looks like long term.
Yeah. And I feel like surrounding ourselves with the right couples, right people. Like it's always funny. I feel like I saw you guys married probably before. I was like, I knew you guys were gonna get married. I mean, you just have those feelings. Like, how there's people you're just like, oh, you're gonna get married, but you don't know that yet. It's like, it's funny.
You can see it from the outside.
Exactly. It's easy to see things from the outside. So I think that's where the power is of, it's like obviously having the spouse, but having people around you that are propelling you towards that. Because I mean, I want to be around people that fan the fuel of or fan the flame of our dreams, and where we feel like God's leading us. And I think that is just such an important part too.
It's good.
So
What would you guys say? I'm curious what your answer would be. Same question.
Yeah, when I think of God's design for marriage, I believe it was supposed to be a picture of Jesus, and I think when you can't do that alone. Like we can't do that by ourselves, and so it's done in marriage. It's done in community, and I think we touched on that, but I see where like Josh is all truth. Like, and he's grown in many ways, and I've grown in many ways, but he's like all truth, and we always jokingly said all truth and all love, and like, and so it's like, but together said, we come together, and it's so beautiful to see us be refined. And he's grown. I've grown so much because of his strengths, and I feel like vice versa, but we together are a better, more beautiful picture of Jesus than just ourselves alone. And I think when we have couples like you guys who are doing the hard work, like you mentioned, because marriage doesn't work unless you work, right? And so it's like you have to work for it, and it's a choice daily, and it's like it's the behind the scenes work where we're like praying together, reading together, and doing those things where it's not always seen. And so on the outside, it's like, oh yeah, you're a 9 and a 1, you're a 10. It's easy, but it's not.
No.
It's so much more work than that, and it's going to the Lord daily and praying the prayer, Lord, change me, so that we can reflect Him.
And I'm glad you said that, and Emily alluded to it earlier. It's like people from the outside can look at us and be like, oh man, you guys got a great marriage, and you're so compatible, and behind the scenes it's like, like, if you only knew. Like, when we're out front and we're with people, we try to put on, the best face, but like it's been tons of work over 12 years, and it's so worth it. But man, it takes work, and there's a process, and I think all of us, what we bring to the table and what we bring together. My wife's half Mexican, half Thai. I'm half black, half white. She grew up in a community predominantly Hispanic. I grew up predominantly African American. Our kids go to school in predominantly white community. We have friends who, have resources. People we're friends with that have no resources. We live in what's considered the hood. I mean, we feel called to be a bridge.
That's it.
And to be a bridge in our city, to be a bridge in a variety of different contexts. In marriage, we felt just God had given us a heart for marriages early on, and just have always felt compelled to invest in other marriages, and even hopefully through resources like this podcast. So I think our purpose is continuing to evolve, but we definitely feel called to be a bridge, to build connections and bring people together in different ways.
Yeah.
Anything else, like as we get ready to wrap up, you know, you got individuals, marriages listening to this podcast. What would you share to inspire them in their marriage, to encourage them, to just help them see, man, God's got a purpose for your marriage?
I feel like what I shared earlier about doing the hard work,
Yep.
and just to have the hope that, you know, I feel like we have worked and developed, and now I would say we have a great marriage.
Yep.
But we work really hard. As a matter of fact, we got in a fight last night, but that doesn't,
No.
you know, did
It was all her fault.
But no, like,
you know,
I
I've
would-
arrived.
Paul's arrived. I'm still in process. I'm still praying the prayer Lord change me. I guess Paul's stopped. But anyways, I feel like I would say, from where I'm sitting, if you maybe feel like there's no hope for my marriage, or it's just really, really hard, I would just encourage whoever is listening out there to fight for their marriage, and to put in the work to see something beautiful grow. And I know that one of my favorite quotes from my parents, and what they would say is that they said that they both came into marriage with wounds and baggage. I mean, we all do. Yep. But my mom and dad would always say, you know, we really blossomed under each other's love. And I feel like that's such a beautiful picture of when we love each other, and when we're committed with all of our faults, all our mistakes, we're going to blow it sometimes, but just committed to seeing one another blossom and grow.
So good.
Yeah, it's amazing. I would say two things that just I always think about. It's live unoffendable, especially towards your spouse. The enemy will always try to get us to feel offended. Wow. And I feel like that allows just little things to start coming in. Well, they didn't do this 6 months ago. They didn't do that. And it's like you start all these old things, and it grows and it festers. Yep. So live unoffendable, and then be known. I think that's the other part. It's like I think one of the hardest things, especially as guys, is becoming known. And I think just when we can constantly, it's like we're going to make mistakes, and just being okay to have people around you, talk to your wife, whatever that mistake is, whatever it's like, if you've done anything. And then I think it's like the reaction to that, right? I mean, it's like my wife, I mean, just as I think about this, and this is part of our story, so I'm not derailing this, but it's like you were raised in you were the perfect Christian girl. I mean, and I say that in a nice way, but she was sweet. She didn't have struggles with what I'll call worldly struggles. Yeah. I was the exact opposite. And so it's like you mesh those together, and it's like, man, there's shame that comes with that. There's guys, there's all this stuff. Yeah. And it's like there is but I think it's like, don't be afraid. God's not afraid of sin. God's not afraid of, he's already dealt with it. It's already done. Wow. So it's like, I think in marriage, learning that. So it's like, don't be offended, be known, and just continue to just pursue love together. It's like pursue it at all costs. So
yeah,
come on,
that's
so good.
That's so good.
So good, baby. Would you add anything to what was shared?
I mean, what you guys shared today was so helpful, and my hope is that it would help a lot of marriages, all of it together. But I think of I thought of identity. I think when your identity is strong and you know who you are, and then you can appreciate the identity of your spouse. Yes. And you can see them for like a child of God as well. Then you see them with eyes that are different, and it's not so selfish, it's more selfless. And I think when you love someone out of that, it just works so much better. So I'll add that to that.
That's so good. I know one of the things we were talking about even this morning is in our culture, there's this idea of like power couples. And there's like certain names that come to your mind. Your guys' names came to my mind like right away when I think of power couples. But you know, in our world, it's the famous, it's the celebrity figures, and I just feel like those that are the power couples are those that are most full of purpose and the purpose. Full couples. And like you guys live with such purpose, intention. Your marriage, we've been able to witness, you know, all 12 years.
Yes.
Like you guys have inspired us in so many different ways because you live what you're talking about. And so just love getting the ability to sit down and talk. Honestly, wish we could have more time and talk more just because there's so much. It's so rich, so much good insight. Absolutely loved having my wife on the podcast. First time, and it will not be the last time. I can't wait to have more. And just really believe that marriage is so central to the purpose that God has on our lives.
It is.
And just want to encourage anybody who's listening, man, if you are in a relationship, if you're in a marriage, just see the other person, believe in them, speak into the future that God has for them, allow them to change you so that you can look more like Jesus, and together allow God to use you to change the world.
That's it.
You've got influence, use your influence wherever you are to impact the world around you. You can check out this podcast episode at joshdotzler.com.